Hello guys and welcome. If this is your first time here, I'm Arahi and I absolutely love fragrances. So today's video is a very special video, guys. I have been dying to film this video because it's a review of none other than the very hyped up Sospiro Vibrato. And today, guys, we are going to talk about this fragrance in detail. I am going to give you details, of course, about the fragrance, the notes, and stuff like that. But most importantly, we're going to debunk all of the elephants in the room. We're going to talk about everything that people have been saying about this fragrance. What does it compare to? I have here the fragrance that most people are comparing it to. And I will also give you my thoughts and tell you if this is really worthy of a $300 plus price tag. Anyway, guys, if that sounds like a plan to you, well then just keep on watching. So Sospiro, let's talk a little bit about Sospiro as a fragrance house and a brand itself. So Sospiro, their perfumes are inspired by the beauty and sophistication of classical music. And their fragrances are known for their opulence and grace while being olfactory sensual. So there are two collections in this fragrance house. There's the Herba collection and then there's the Classica collection. Vibrato, which is the perfume that we will be reviewing today, is part of the Classica collection. A very beautiful bottle indeed, guys. It is very weighty, it feels very luxurious, and the details are really luxurious. So Vibrato was launched in 2022 and it's considered a floral citrus fragrance. It was developed by the nose of Christian Provenzano. The notes in this fragrance are bergamot, grapefruit, jasmine, magnolia, ginger, herbal notes, powdery notes, cedar, musk, patchouli, amber, and orris root. So far I've had this fragrance for about 3 weeks, and I can tell you that I've consistently used it for about a week. When you first smell this fragrance, it is undoubtedly an exquisite fragrance. It is a beautiful fragrance. But I'm going to tell you my initial thoughts when I first tried it. And then towards the end, I want you to hold, because the most important part of this video is at the end when I speak about what are people saying about this fragrance, and I compare it to another very favored and prominent fragrance in my collection. So when I first received this fragrance, I opened the box like I always do, and I was very excited, and I took off the cap and I sniffed it immediately, and I was blown away. And I am not going to spoil, what I want to talk about later, but I was a little bit taken aback because it was quite similar to another fragrance in my collection. But nonetheless, I decided to just, try and be objective about it and give it an opportunity. So when I first tried this fragrance, I could definitely feel that this was going to be a journey. I don't know how to explain it, but so when I first opened this fragrance, it immediately hit me with a collection of citrus. It was very citrusy and definitely powdery. It's quite powdery, but it's not powdery in a way that I find kind of annoying or that feels dated or anything like that. It really is a very beautiful fragrance. Then, as it continues to evolve, you get that warmth and that spiciness, and there's a freshness and a greenness to it, but it's interesting because there's also some woodiness to it that you feel, I would say about 1 minute into sniffing the fragrance. It just continues to evolve. It is definitely a journey. then upon dry down, you're definitely going to be able to appreciate that aromatic quality and the muskiness of the fragrance. The muskiness is just a very beautiful, smooth musk. The entire fragrance is to me extremely balanced, and I'll talk to you in a minute about sillage, projection, and all those other points that I know really interest you. But I can tell you that it is truly a very well blended, very sophisticated smelling fragrance. And of course, as usual, later I will also tell you how it makes me feel. This is not necessarily a fragrance that you need to overspray. I don't think that you need to overspray this fragrance. What I recommend is if you are trying a decant or you picked it up, I would recommend that you spray it in your pulse points, behind your ears, around your neck, here behind your wrist, and also behind your elbows. But I would not overspray it because for me, the first time I used it, I did overspray it, and I think it was a bit much. And there is definitely a very intense quality to this fragrance. And we'll talk later about beast or not. So I have read, while doing my research prior to picking it up and also in preparation for this video, many people have said that this leans feminine. I do not think that this leans feminine or masculine. I think this is truly a unisex fragrance. When it comes to projection, I would give this fragrance a 7 out of 10, which means that I consider the projection to be moderate. This is not the type of fragrance that you'll be in one room, apply it, and people in another room or outside the room are automatically going to smell it. But it is kind of like one of those fragrances that walk with you in like a scent bubble. And it also applies to the sillage, which we'll talk about in a minute. When it comes to sillage, I would definitely say that this is about an 8 out of 10. I don't think that this fragrance, based on my experience and my use of this fragrance for a span of over a week, I don't think that this is a fragrance that leaves a long trail. But it is definitely a fragrance that if you're wearing it, there's your scent bubble. And if you stop somewhere and then you walk away, your scent bubble will remain in that group for a bit. It's not a fragrance, though, that you can just pass by and leave a trail that will last 5-10 minutes. So for me, this is a very nice sillage, definitely reasonable, but it's not a crazy trail type of fragrance, if you know what I mean. When it comes to longevity, I have to say I could not get more than 6 hours out of this fragrance without having to reapply it. During the first hour, it was quite strong without me overspraying, as the fragrance is developing and going through all of its process of falling into that full body and that full depth that we come to appreciate. The fragrance feels quite strong. If you don't pay attention closely, you might misinterpret it and think that this is a beast fragrance. To me, this is not a beast fragrance, but it's not like it's a demure or a kind of faint fragrance. No, there's definitely some oomph and character to this fragrance, and it definitely lasts longer than the other fragrance in my collection that I'm going to compare it to. But for sure, this is definitely a fragrance that did not give me more than 6 hours, which means that at around 5 hours, if I were to smell my wrist, I could barely smell it. I could smell that it had been there, but not much. So right around the 6 hour mark, I would have to reapply it, and then, it would come back and, but at the end of the day, 6 hours, guys, 6 hours. So as I said before, this is a fragrance with a great deal of character, and it's truly a beautiful fragrance. The other thing about this fragrance, guys, that I really like is that it does have citrus, It does have florals, but it also has a woody quality to it and a musk quality. So when you have so many different types of notes in a fragrance, or so many groups of notes in a fragrance, it makes it a very versatile fragrance. So I give it a 9 for versatility, which means that if I want to use it during the winter, I probably could. I would probably layer it with another fragrance that is just known for its woodiness, not necessarily muskiness because it would make it a bit light, but woody fragrance or an oud fragrance, just slightly, because again, this fragrance can be quite overpowering for the first hour of wear. But I would definitely say that if you're planning to use this fragrance on its own, this is more of a spring, summer, and you could get away with using it during the fall, but probably during the first half of the fall season. So before I talk to you guys about what is being said about this fragrance, let's talk about how Vibrato makes me feel. And before I tell you how it makes me feel, I'm just going to read the definition of vibrato for you. So vibrato in music is a rapid, slight variation in pitch, whether it's in singing or in playing a musical instrument, that produces a stronger or richer note. So it's a variation. When someone is singing or playing an instrument, it is a variation, right? And it creates a stronger note. I will tell you that when I use this fragrance, it is a very uplifting fragrance. I can see why so many people love it. I can see why so many people really speak highly of it, and why it's created, such an amount of hype, guys. And at the end, I'll tell you if it's truth or is it just hype. But I can tell you that I definitely understand why people feel the way they feel about this fragrance. There is something that hooks you on immediately when using this fragrance. So this fragrance, much like the fragrance that I'm going to compare it to in a couple of minutes, is for me a fragrance that speaks of a gentleman or a lady who is very exposed and worldly, and there is a certain je ne sais quoi to them. There's a certain sophistication, calmness, and elegance to who they are. They are very in tune, almost like they're very in tune with themselves, but they're very self-actualized, right? This is an individual who has reached that part of their life. It's not necessarily that they're an elder or that they're older or that they're in their middle years, 40s, 50s. No, it's not necessarily that. It just means that this person has been exposed to different cultures, to different situations, and it's just someone with a certain level of worldliness and sophistication. But in that, there is a smoothness and an air of mystery to this person. That is the feel that I get from this fragrance. All right, guys. So the next thing I want to do is I just want to talk about, because I think it's really important to talk about what is being said in fragrance communities, not just on Instagram, not just on YouTube, but fragrance communities overall, based on my research and based on friends that I have that may have tried this fragrance. What is being said in, the fragrance lover communities and forums. And after I do that, then I'm going to talk about, do I consider this a safe blind buy or not? And then I'm going to give you my overall and final thoughts. So the first thing that I want to discuss when it comes to what is being said about this fragrance is a fragrance that is being compared to Vibrato, right? Or Vibrato is being compared to this fragrance because this fragrance is much older than 2022, which is when Vibrato was launched. And that fragrance, guys, which if you have been following me for a while and have seen several of my fragrance videos, you know that this fragrance is one of my favorite fragrances of all time, period. And that is Tagar by Bulgari. So this fragrance, which is Tagar by Bulgari, is the one that everybody says is what Vibrato is a dupe of. So let me start by saying, guys, these fragrances are absolutely exquisite. You are never going to come on my channel and I am going to bash a fragrance, because I respect the artistry and I respect the creativity of the nose, the creative directors, the fragrance house that put these fragrances together. So that's not how I'm going to approach this. What I am going to do is be objective about my observations. And the funny thing is, guys, that I know this fragrance really, really well, because I've had this fragrance for years. I've definitely been a lover of Tagar for the longest time. You guys know that I love Bulgari fragrances. So yeah. So number one, when I first sprayed Vibrato, I knew immediately that it was extremely similar to Tagar. Definitely, definitely. Undoubtedly, there's no question about it. If anybody tells you that these two fragrances don't smell extremely similar, they're not telling you the truth. I mean, the truth is that they are extremely similar. Now, when it comes to the performance, where I find the difference, when you spray each, whether it's that you spray one on this arm and the other on this arm, you're going to immediately, upon spraying, you're going to know that there is a similarity that is mind-boggling. It's like a 90% similarity between these fragrances. The difference between these fragrances, though, is how they evolve, right? The journey of the fragrance from initial spray to the full body, where you're exposed to the true depth of the fragrance, number one. Number two, the second difference that I find in these fragrances is as it relates to performance. So when we talk about things like longevity, not so much on sillage, not so much on projection, but when it comes to longevity, there's definitely a considerable difference. And most importantly, guys, and very, very interesting, when it comes to the depth of the fragrance, there's definitely a considerable difference. So let me talk to you about these differences. Let's start with when you first spray this fragrance. When you first spray both fragrances, you are going to find that all of the notes are almost immediately, within the first, I would say, 10 minutes, you have picked up on most of the notes of this fragrance. If not all, to be honest with you. Vibrato has a depth which definitely beats Tagar. Like, it definitely beats Tagar when it comes to depth, right? Now, when it comes to after the fragrance has now evolved and has settled into what we call the dry down, you will definitely immediately notice that Tagar is a bit smooth. It's smoother than Vibrato, but that does not mean that Vibrato is not a smooth fragrance or that it's not well blended. It's just, I don't want to use the word weak to describe when you compare these at the dry down, but what I will say is that this one has a smoother smell, right? I think there's a touch of muskiness that is greater in this one than in Vibrato. Now, at dry down, Vibrato definitely is a bit more intense, definitely has more depth, and definitely has a longer span, right? The longevity of Vibrato is about 6 hours, and when it comes to Tagar, you're going to get about 4 hours. Some people have reported 2 hours, and I do believe it because I have a very close friend who loves this fragrance, and she's actually the one that turned me on to it. And on her, it only lasts about 2 hours. So she always has a decant in her purse. And she just continues to respray it because she is this is her signature fragrance, and she's been using it for years and she just loves it. So she doesn't mind respraying it. Now, I will tell you, this one will definitely last you 6 hours. But around the 6 hour mark, you are going to have to respray it. Now, when it comes to price point, both of these fragrances are very expensive. This fragrance is from Bulgari, and it's currently, my understanding is that it's discontinued. It's really no longer available. I know there's a couple of retailers that still have it. This fragrance, I can tell you guys that although it's being said that it's being discontinued, I saw it as recent as maybe 9 months ago or less. I found this fragrance being sold at the Bulgari store at the Ahmad Airport in Doha, Qatar. So there are still some retailers that still carry this fragrance. All right, so now that we've covered the comparison between these two fragrances, let's talk about other things that are being said about Vibrato. So the other thing that's being said about Vibrato, it's that it's a bit designer-ish. And I have to stop there, guys, because, you know, when it comes to designer or niche fragrances, here is my perspective. A fragrance is a fragrance. An exquisite fragrance is an exquisite fragrance. I don't care if it's designer, if it's niche. Do I prefer niche? Not necessarily. If I had to pick between living with just designer fragrances or just niche fragrances, I would probably pick niche. And it's because the level of complexity of niche fragrances, the layers to the development of the fragrance, it's just different. So when people say that this is a designer-ish fragrance, I don't even know how to define designer-ish, right? Because there's a lot of designer fragrances that are absolutely exquisite and that can compete with certain niche fragrances, in my opinion. So another thing that's being said about Vibrato is that it is overpriced. Look, when it comes to pricing for me is so subjective, right? Because your worth of a specific item depends on the value that you set on it, right? So for me, $325 for this fragrance may be worth it, right? But for you, it may not be worth it. And that's okay. It's okay for both of us. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it's a matter of opinion depending on the value that you place on the juice that's in this bottle, the presentation, the experience, how you feel with it, etc. So another comment along those lines is that this is the niche version of Bulgari Tigar. And honestly, if that's your opinion, I totally respect it. Again, I think these two fragrances, they definitely are very similar, guys. To me, they're 90% similar, which, guys, that's pretty high. Would I have picked this up if I would have known that they were that similar and other things like that? Probably I would have still picked it up because I really love this scent profile. And I think that Sospiro does incredible fragrances. And I like their longevity. There's many aspects to consider when you decide to pick up a fragrance of this price point or not, right? But do I think that this is the niche version of, the Bulgari fragrance? To be honest with you, I just don't see it that way. But I can definitely understand why someone would feel that way. And guys, last but not least, something else that has been said about this fragrance. And I picked comments that have been made repeatedly, not just one-offs. So another comment that has been made is that this fragrance smells like pine sol. I do not, honestly, guys, I do not get pine sol on any iteration of this fragrance, right? So as the fragrance journey begins on its path to the dry down, I don't get pine sol at any point, and I don't get pine sol at the end. So it may just be a skin chemistry, or I don't know, we're all different. So I don't dismiss or disregard anything that's being said about what people are smelling and how they're feeling with it. Because again, the fragrance experience is quite subjective, and based on each individual. All right, guys. So is this a safe blind buy? I have to tell you guys, I really think that this is a safe blind buy. Call me biased because, I love this scent profile, and I love this fragrance, and I love Tigar from Bulgari, which has been compared to. I love them all. But at the end of the day, I think that this is an exquisite fragrance. I think it's blended beautifully. I think that it is worth what is being charged. Is it, something that for sure, if you buy it, you're going to love? Well, it really depends on you. But I think that this is a safe blind buy if you don't have a problem with any of the notes that I shared with you. And you are okay with owning a fragrance that is 90% similar to Bulgari Tigar. So if you have tried or you own Bulgari Tigar, do I think that you need to pick up this fragrance? Do you need to make this fragrance a priority? Absolutely not. But if you really love that scent profile as much as I do, and you just want to have another one in your collection that is, with a stronger longevity, etc., well, then I think that this is the fragrance for you. My overall thoughts on this fragrance. I am going to say that this for me overall is about an 8 out of 10. And I'm giving it an 8 out of 10, not because of its comparison to Tigar. I'm not really basing it at all on that comparison. I am really now evaluating the fragrance on its own. This is a lovely, lovely, lovely scent. I would be pressed to find someone who really, really doesn't love this, unless there's a note that you just don't like from the notes that I shared with you. But this is really a lovely fragrance. 8 really comes from the fact that you're only going to get about 5 hours out of this fragrance, and then around the 6 hour or 5.5 hour mark, you are going to have to reapply it. So it's really not a beast mode fragrance, but it's not a weak fragrance either, guys. Don't get me wrong. This is a very lovely fragrance that has reasonable longevity. It's more of a scent bubble type of fragrance. It doesn't have a trail of sillage, but it is definitely a fragrance that when you wear it, it will hook you on, because you are going to smell incredible. You're going to feel a certain way about it. It definitely does make you feel beautiful, sensual, sophisticated, and there's an air of mystery to you. If you've seen the video that I did where I spoke in detail about Bulgari Tigar, then you know that one of the things that I said that I feel when I wear that fragrance is an air of mystery. It makes me feel mysterious. And that is also the case with this fragrance. That's where that sexiness that people talk about comes from. So overall, I think this is a great fragrance. If you love the notes, this is definitely a safe blind buy. It is so worth it. Wisely speaking, I think you should wait maybe, until maybe another 6 months, so you can start maybe finding it at discounters, so that you don't have to pay that steep price of $325. But again, if you're into it, if you're into Bulgari Tigar and you just want to have this fragrance also, then I know you're probably going to go for it. But I'm just letting you know, if you don't have this scent profile in your collection and you want to go ahead and give it a try, I would definitely recommend it. But for me, this is an 8 out of 10 fragrance, lovely, beautiful, and something worthy of a collection. And this, guys, is the end of my review of Vibrato from Sospiro. Anyway, guys, I hope this video was enjoyable. I hope that I was able to give you enough information for you to make a well-rounded decision around, is this a fragrance that you want to pick up or not? Is this a fragrance that you want to have as part of your collection or not? If you have any other questions, please let me know in the description box below. Please don't forget to subscribe. I would really appreciate it. And leave a comment telling me your thoughts about this fragrance, whether you've tried it or not, whether you're planning to try it, pick it up. What are your thoughts about everything that we've discussed today? As usual, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for the love and the support. I really appreciate it. And I will see you in the next video.